Today, I have a very special guest here in the studio with me. She's had years of experience as a haunt actress. She's also created some incredible sets, and she's played a multitude of characters. And she's also one of my very good friends, Cutti.
On Haunt Culture.
Everybody, welcome back to Haunt Culture. I am so excited to have my good friend Cutti here with me.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. We've worked together for well over a decade at Scarowinds.
Yes, so many hairstyles, so many hair colors ago.
Lots of good memories and scares. Why don't we jump right on in? Tell us how it all began with you and Scarowinds.
Oh man. To say that the start of this was unexpected really doesn't even quite cover it. I was a senior in high school and I was at a birthday party, and some friends of mine happened to mention that they were going to audition for Scarowinds in a couple days and suggested to me that I should also audition. And initially I wasn't going to. I was really intimidated by all of it, but I thought about it a lot, and I was really uncertain about whether or not I would even get it, but I just took a chance, and that's where it all started. Senior in high school, not really sure what she wants to do, but let's try this, and then now it's 13 years later.
Talking about that first season, you started out in a scare zone known as Feeding Frenzy.
Oh, the Feeding Frenzy. Feeding Frenzy was the vampire attraction. It was an outdoor area, so you have mazes and scare zones, and this was just kind of almost like a quick walkthrough, but they really did maximize the space that it was in terms of the sets, the props, and the amount of actors that were not only inside the area but on either end, so entrance and exit. You're being scared and entertained from the moment you approach it to after you leave. I thought that was really smart, especially as I got older. I understood why they did that. It had a very late 90s, early 2000s vibe, which I appreciated. It was like a nightclub almost, and it was overtaken by vampires, and there was this hierarchy inside of like a king and a queen, and I was initially cast as the vampire queen. I thought that required me to stay like on this throne in a kind of a small space for most of the night, and I was like so full of energy then that it just didn't feel right to me. So I actually asked, could I just be like another kind of vampire, or even why do I have to stay on this spot? I actually changed my character, and one of my now very best friends filled that spot in as the vampire king, and not only had no problem being in that area, but also just took that and made it its own entity. So it was kind of a really cool change of fate, I guess you could say, change of casting. But yeah, there were like cars. They had like cop cars on either side of it. I mean, they did a lot with this space, and I was such a baby actor. There's so many things that I did and said then that I probably wouldn't have done and said now. Just not that it was bad or wrong necessarily, especially for somebody who was so young. When I look back on it, I'm like, oh, you really tried, didn't you? You tried to make that something.
Well, I just remember Feeding Frenzy was always an incredible maze. Had the best playlist of all the mazes.
Oh, I'll still listen to it. And the costumes.
Yes. I think still is the most iconic scare zone to ever have been at Scarowinds.
So I did a total of 5 seasons as a vampire. And I like to think of it as I took a couple gap years in between. So I was in Feeding Frenzy from 2010 through 2012. So I did those 3 seasons. 2013 and 14, I was in a different area. And then I decided to come back as a vampire in 2015 and 2016. But by that point, Feeding Frenzy had turned into Bloodyard, and the location, the backstory, the theming had all changed. So I did 5 seasons as a vampire, and it was like different kinds of vampires.
I do remember that after that 2-year gap, when you, Steven, and Brian all got back together, that just was a great reunion, seeing y'all all back together scaring.
It was funny because I joked that I had taken a couple years to study abroad based on the theme of the area that I was in.
Going back to your 2 years abroad, the first time playing a character outside of a vampire, what was that like?
I was really nervous and really excited at the same time. This particular character was in a brand new scare zone called London Terror. And it was and still is one of the most impressive and beautiful sets I have ever worked on. But I was working in the set as an actor. I mean, it's gorgeous, and it is a small replica of London in the time that Jack the Ripper was supposed to be out and about. Doing his thing. I said that so casually. Murdering people. Doing his thing. Anyway. So we have this new area, and my operations managers, who you may be familiar with, because I asked, am I going to be a vampire again this year? And actually they said, we have a brand new character for you in a brand new area, and we thought that you would play her really well. And as nervous as I was also really excited, and I appreciated that they thought of me specifically. And I wound up playing the madam of a brothel that Jack the Ripper would be frequenting. That was a challenge for me in a few ways, because I was well aware that this haunt was PG-13, and you are asked to play a kind of character that would almost really be considered rated R. I had to find the balance of, like, people know what this is, people know who my character is and what I'm doing, and not only that, but I had mistresses of the night, those kinds of my employees, and we're all towing this line of, like, appropriate and not appropriate, and how necessary is it to the story? And I think it was really cool because it was a challenge. I appreciated having to develop a character in that way and have a little bit more class behind it.
So I do remember that season when you first took the character, especially the media event. You, me, and Andrew, Bubbles the Clown, worked. And we were playing around because you were still trying to figure out your character's name.
I was trying to figure out a lot of things about her, yes.
Yeah, I remember we had a lot of good laughs that morning. Oh, man. Coming up with names.
When you're delirious and in your early 20s and you have to show up at this park at like 4:30 in the morning, everybody knows you probably didn't go to bed early. Mm-hmm. I really do think that the sleep deprivation and delirium is essential to character development, because it worked out that morning and she lived on in infamy.
Why don't you share with us all your iconic characters you've played over the years?
So I started off as Vampire Queen. So that was 10, 11, and 12. 2010, 11, and 12. And then 13 and 14, I was in London. So in 2014, Scarowinds started adding these additional attractions called skeleton keys, where essentially you pay a little bit more on top of your price of admission, and you get a more intimate experience with the actors, and they're only in scare zones and not mazes. That was, again, yet another challenge that I was really excited for, because I even had to audition separately for skeleton keys on top of that.
Wow.
I played this character who was basically a lady of the night, but she also worked in a pub, and that kind of started another couple of years of doing skeleton keys. Even when I went back to being a vampire, they had actors cast for that skeleton key, but there were several times where I was asked to fill in because I had experience with it, and again, that was its own set. So in that instance, I was just a vampire, and I had been captured, and they were trying to, figure out, I don't know what they were doing. I honestly don't know. They were capturing a vampire, and I don't know if they were going to do experiments on it later or what, but I was captured, and then I eventually escaped. And then in 2017, so towards the end of 2016, I had an experience that I think maybe a lot of actors do when they decide that they're done with this character. You know, you've kind of said goodbye to it. It's not that you don't like it anymore, but you're ready for something else. I was really excited in 2017 when I was cast for a Skeleton Key again. And this character was just so fun, and I felt so connected to it. My scene was basically a seance. And it had a script. I didn't want to stick to the script. I'll be honest, I liked the story, but if I'm going to do this, and this is just a decision that I made, that I'm proud that I made, and I'm glad that I made, but if I'm going to do this sketch, maybe even hundreds of times over a weekend, a really busy weekend, it would be hard for me to not get burnt out if I didn't improvise a little bit. So I stuck with the story, but I really did improvise all the lines. But basically I'm having a seance, and it's just me and one other actor, and she would kind of, I was the one they were there to see. She was almost like my receptionist. I know that's not what she was. She was a monster, but she would like check everybody in and then get them ready to see me. And she was fantastic. I loved working with her. This character was really heavily inspired by Rasputin, actually. She was this Russian fortune teller who had like the milky eyes and everything. And I don't know what it was about Rasputin in the Anastasia movie, and even the real historical person, that I was just like, they make sense to me to kind of put them together. So in my character development and the things that I said, the way that I spoke, the way that I moved, was how would like a female version of Rasputin be doing this. I did that for 1 year, and then the year after that, I kind of linked that character to the character that I played after, a gypsy character, and she was also very dark and mysterious, and I based a lot of her movements and the way that she spoke off of my favorite horror character, which is the nun. And the nun doesn't really speak, but my movements were based on her. And then the last character that I actually played was in 2019. I was talent managing the zombie scare zone, and when I wasn't in uniform, I was in costume most of the time as a zombie. And this character for me was important to be very much a supporting role. I didn't really want to, that whole area was not about me, and I didn't want to be a main character for once. I wanted to be like a supporting role. So she was just a dead actress. She was a dead starlet who had moved to America to make it in the 1920s. So I gave her a story, so I had something to go off of, but really I was there in that moment to support my cast. So my character wasn't quite as important.
I didn't remember hearing that you had based that one character off the nun's walk.
I actually got the chance to meet that actress at Mad Monster Party in 2021.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
She actually, I told her about that, and she actually asked to see, do you have any pictures? So I showed her pictures of this character, and obviously this character doesn't look anything like the nun. Like I said, it was just the way that I carried myself and my body language that was inspired by her. And she and I talked about that for a few minutes, and I will never forget that. It was so great.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Bonnie Aarons, if you ever watch this, you're very nice, and I still think about you.
It blew my mind recently about her. Before that, I never thought I had seen her before The Nun. And then I watched The Princess Diaries.
Oh.
And she plays such a small role, but you're like, when you recognize her, it's like, oh, The Nun is in The Princess Diaries.
Yeah. It's always funny to me because in The Princess Diaries, her husband is like, I'm going to put your face on a postage stamp. And now when I see the nun, I just think the same thing. I think of a postage stamp with a nun on it.
So now talking about characters, you've kind of talked about it just now, but what is your process when you're creating a character?
It often starts with what their backstory or motive for being the way they are is. Did something happen to them? What is their environment? Where are they from? Are they looking for revenge? Are they like a warrior type character? I'll be honest, I never was comfortable playing a character that was seen as a victim. That just wasn't, I know that is a very valuable character to have in a haunt because it helps the other actors. that was just never, that was a weird limitation that I put on myself. I was like, I don't, and maybe it's because I'm 5 feet tall and I don't want anybody to think of me as a victim because I'm small but mighty. I don't know. I would always try to approach these characters from a position of like power or strength. That was a huge drive for me. Like, who are they? What human elements do they have? Because then I build upon that. So like with the fortune teller character, obviously we know that Rasputin was a real person, and there is and was a lot of mystery surrounding him. I loved that. I was like, we don't want anybody to know too much about her. It's really just that she can speak to the dead. What kind of role they play in that area, like with other people, because it's, I still want to fit in with the scare zone that I'm in.
2018 was the year of the Four Horsemen. That was a big change for Scarowinds. And a big change for you, because you went from just being a haunt performer to also being a talent manager. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Well, tell us about going into that transition and what that was like, being a monster and a supervisor.
At the same time.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very unique perspective to take, and I really appreciated the fact, because let's be honest, I love dressing up. I will take any opportunity to dress up. I liked that I was able to be in costume while helping, but I also saw, aside from that, I saw the value in that specifically. I mean, you are an acting coach essentially, and you were there all night. So why not be in character? Why not be in costume? Because not only will that help other people, not only will that help you lead by example, when they see you doing it, you're in it with them, but it's also a little more seamless when maybe you do need to coach a cast member of yours and you're pulling them aside. It's not like I'm out there in my uniform in a polo shirt pulling this actor aside. It's two actors, and you don't know what they're doing, you don't know what they're talking about, but really what's happening in that moment is character development. And I was actually really comfortable with it, because by that point I had become confident not only in my own character development, but I did feel ready to help others. And this was a new thing that we were doing. This was also, during the days of Scare Force. So it's not like we were in this one particular zone. We were roaming through the park, and it was really important to me to balance keeping everybody safe on busy nights and making sure that we're taking breaks and drinking water and it became second nature to me. It's a lot of moving parts at once, and I think that I got good at it because of the way that my brain works. It's almost like, for me, the more that's happening at once, the more I'm able to manage it. I don't know what that is, but sometimes it's like I can do well in the chaos because I already know we need to do this and we need to be here by this time, so we need to have had breaks, we need to be drinking water. Why is your mask falling off? Let's go fix that for you. Why are you speaking in a British accent? Those things, they're all happening at once, and you're coaching people and you're managing breaks. It was a challenge, but I felt really comfortable with it, and I think that it happened at the right time, and that was important too, because there have been times where I had auditioned for other things and not gotten them, and I was sad about it, but I also realized that maybe I just wasn't ready, and I had to accept that. And that's a huge thing that happens when you work for a place for so long, is you want more and you realize that it happens when it's supposed to.
Done a little bit of managing, but to act and to supervise people, and especially, I don't know if we made this clear, when we were the Four Horsemen, we were in hordes, so you had multiple people to keep up with in large crowds. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I was very fortunate though, because I had a great cast, I had a great team. So it's the Four Horsemen. There's war, death, famine, and plague. Yes. How could I forget? No, I was over famine, and we were, I think we were like the smallest group of the Four Horsemen. We were small but mighty. It's not that we didn't get along at first. I think they happened to put a group of people together that honestly didn't really know each other very well. I noticed that in other groups of the Horsemen, there was some familiarity, but we were pretty much strangers. And so there was a curveball there, but we came together really well. And I was really grateful that my actors listened to my feedback and understood that it wasn't a criticism of them. It's like, we have to become believable as an entity. We are all we have this unifying thing. So if it seems like I'm pushing you and challenging you, it's because I know that you can do this. And I got lucky that they saw that in themselves because I saw it in them.
That season, I was in the plague group, so we were in different hordes. One thing I will never forget of that season was the opening show, and just how much went into that. I still have the original script that they gave us.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Funny, quick story about that. So that year there were obviously some media promos that were made and circulated on the internet, on TV. But you kind of think, once the season's over and those characters aren't even around anymore, you just don't really expect to see those promos again. In 2020, I happened to be at AAA in Fort Mill, South Carolina, getting some stuff done on my car. I'm waiting, and because AAA also manages like travel, I think they do like travel agency type things. There was this video on loop in their office of things to do in the area, like attractions. And I'm sitting there waiting on my car, and I happen to look up, and this promo from 2018 for Scarowinds is playing, and I just see my face, obviously as a monster, but I was just like, oh my gosh. And I had this, it was so weird because I was like, but it was kind of cool because I was like, first of all, I can't believe they're still playing this 2 years later. And it is kind of funny to just, the last thing you'd expect. I mean, we're in quarantine, there's a lot of stress happening in the world. And on top of that, I got to take my car in, and I just look up, and there I am. I'm like, wow, that was cool in a way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But sorry, you know, the opening ceremony.
I think out of all the years, there's always an opening ceremony for Scarowinds. If you're going to Scarowinds, don't miss it. Get there early so you can see it. That season, they just, every weekend, they kept adding new stuff to it. And we just had to roll.
Or taking away. So it's like, you've been doing this for 5 weeks. We need you to remember in 30 seconds that you're not doing that.
The opening show, first the Overlord comes out, he does his whole speech. And then one at a time, he introduces each of the hordes. Each horde, we have a giant flag with our logo on it. And then we had the smoking thing.
Smoke bomb?
Smoke grenade? I don't know.
In our color, too.
Yeah, that was the cool part. We all had our own colors. War was red.
Like a gang.
Death was green. Famine was purple. And plague was blue. So we all came out with a little smoke stick.
I always got ruled out to carry those things. I think it was because I'm small, and also the way that my character moved was very like crouched in a way, and like just mechanical. There was a lot of choreography for that.
So much.
I mean, and it was so fun and so cool to see it all come together because we're rehearsing all together, but our groups go out individually. When it finally happened, when we did it for the first time, I'm even getting goosebumps thinking about it now, because it was like, wow, look at all of this practice that has come out, and it's so seamless. A funny story, Patrick from Death.
Yeah.
He and I, it's been 5 years now, but whenever we interact with each other, we make a joke about Helen Mirren, because the opening ceremony, when the Overlord is conjuring all of the horsemen out, he's speaking in like Latin, I think it is.
That's right.
And there was something that he said, and it's Latin, but it sounded to me like he was saying Helen Mirren. And I just kept picturing all of us walking out, but also Helen Mirren walking out. Exactly. So I'm on stage trying to keep it together. And I'm crying laughing because I just keep imagining Helen Mirren coming out, and it is so bad. I'm laughing and breaking character so bad that I had to hide behind other people. And I eventually Patrick moves either, I think he had a flag or his like death cape, but he hides me because he sees that I'm not getting through this unscathed. And then I eventually had to tell him, and now it's just like this thing, like on his birthday, I'll like post a picture of Helen Mirren, like, happy birthday. Once you hear it, it was really hard to unhear it. At the end, you know, we're kind of like released onto the crowd because we were being brought out on stage, and that part was really fun for me because as an actor, I loved their reactions because they're seeing us and they almost feel safe from us because
That's right.
we're on stage. You could just see people gradually becoming more unsettled as we file down the stairs and into the crowd with them. As a haunt actor, that's like all you could ever want. It's like, I want to see the fear in your face.
Yes.
I'm a very nice person, but I do enjoy scaring people. I do enjoy traumatizing them a little bit.
I mean, you've had years scaring people. What are some of your best scare stories?
As a vampire, I remember, and this was still in the days of Feeding Frenzy, the first time I ever made somebody pee, it was on her boyfriend, who was wearing like khaki pants. It couldn't have been a worse situation. I did like a pop-up from the ground, and she wasn't expecting me, obviously. So she starts to kind of climb her boyfriend and like wrap her leg around him, and she just let loose.
Oh, God.
And then I see them move past me a little bit, and she has since unclimbed him, and then I just see it down the side of his leg. And he realized it the same time I did, and he was like, "Did you pee on me?" And then she just took off. I think she was still scared and also embarrassed. I may have caused a breakup. I don't know. One of my other favorites is in the Seance Skeleton Key in 2017. This is why I don't regret not necessarily sticking to the script, but rather sticking to the storyline. Oh my God, this set was gorgeous. I mean, it had the lighting. It was so intricate. I mean, you felt like you were really there in this person's like makeshift like shop. And I don't know, what is a place that holds seances? Like parlor, I guess? Between the lighting and everything, and I had these white contact lenses. So at a certain point, I was kind of challenging this spirit, and at that point, again, it's that uneasiness you can feel from your guest who's watching this performance start to rise. So I'm challenging this spirit, saying, if you don't want to reveal yourself, then do it through me. So basically I'm saying, possess me. That was when I could usually feel people like, I don't like where this is going. And I would stop talking as Madame Zora, and then I would just use this other voice. My eyes were like solid white, and there's just red light around me, and I'm moving differently. And there are other special effects in this Skeleton Key that made it worse too. Like you could hear a voice through the room, and that was not mine. So it's almost like this thing is answering me. It was just a whole thing. And the reaction to people feeling like they are in this close space with a person who has just invited a ghost or demon into them is very unsettling, much like you are now. And so there were several times like that where it was very rewarding to get that successful scare. And they would often come back later in the night and even tell somebody, like, this was great, she was great, we were genuinely afraid. One of the best parts, though, was when we had to call maintenance after one of the skits because somebody tried to get out so quickly before I had even finished my performance that they ripped the door off the hinges.
Oh my God.
I mean, they hulked it.
Got some good scare stories. I've never heard these from you before.
I don't know how you've never heard them.
Wow. So you did spend some time doing park decor. And you did a lot of set designing, so why don't you share some of the sets and stuff that you created for your Scarowinds?
I should have even mentioned this before. So when you asked like how it all began for me, it really makes me think about not only how long ago that was and how different of a person I was, but it opened a lot of doors for me. So yeah, eventually, I think, it was 2017. I was still acting and doing Scarowinds, but they had introduced a decor team. And we kind of had something like that before, but this was much more focused. So we were doing Scarowinds, we were just bringing Winterfest in, as a real entity and its own events, and that led into other events throughout the year. For Scarowinds specifically, one of the first things I ever worked on that team was, I think it was the last year we ever did Playground. So we got to work on some of the Playground sets. It was kind of funny because I always had mixed feelings about Playground. I think it was just the whole kid thing. When I started working on the set, I realized the importance of it and how it did have its place in the park, and I gained an appreciation for it. From then on, it was, after that was Winterfest, and I wasn't really sure because we had another team that did haunts specifically. I wasn't sure if I would actually get to work on haunt again, but I did the next year, and it was, we introduced the Hollow. We built and made everything from the ground up. And I don't want to, I'm not taking any of the credit for the design itself. There were a few parts of that I did have, that I contributed to. What my team was really responsible for was, we have this idea, we have this concept, how can you bring it to life? And that's where we step in. So we are making, you see these vines in the set. We made those from scratch. It was like layers of things and paint and latex. And it was so rewarding to just be that deep in the process. So we did the Hollow. That was new in 2018, and we started that summer, and we got it all up and ready. One of my favorite achievements, if we're talking haunt specifically, was the Tooth Fairy, because we were flipping a maze. Not only did we flipped a maze and basically made a new one in a little over a month. I feel if time serves me, or if memory serves me correctly, we used some elements of this older maze, but really the Tooth Fairy was brand new to us. The story, the concept, and other parks had done it, but of course, it's never going to be the same, and it shouldn't be the same. I think we should always put your own spin on it. Absolutely. So we were able to do that. And it was fun. It was late nights. It was hot in there. It was in the middle of summer. But I wouldn't trade it for a second. It was a lot of problem solving. How can we adapt this set and this story into our own world? There's even a room in the Tooth Fairy that it's almost like a time capsule. It's the collection room, and it has like elements of other scare zones and things like that. And it's almost like trophies that the Tooth Fairy has taken. But it's really sweet and nostalgic, because when I walk through, and when other people who have been around walk through, we know that those are elements of other things that maybe we've even been a part of or acted in the past. The Tooth Fairy is very near and dear to my heart.
It's funny you say that. I walked through Tooth Fairy the first year it was out, and I remember I was really just kind of enjoying all the details and everything, walking through it. So that's I didn't realize you had a big part in that either. Oh, I'm such a bad friend.
You are not a bad friend. You are the best. It was... Yeah, I think that was the first maze that it really is the first maze that I helped flip. And I had an amazing, amazing team and support system in that. We had help from costuming, makeup. My team was on top of it. Yeah. Huge shout out to... Can I shout out Michelle?
Yeah, of course.
Huge shout out to Michelle.
Yeah, she's right here with Jared.
There she is, yes. That Michelle led the charge on that. And I was, a supervisor working under her, and together we led our team to do that. And I'm so proud of my team. It was so much fun. And in the way that people responded to it once it was open, that made it so much more rewarding. And not only that, but the area around it. Because when you're building things like that, you make a mess. You make a mess to make something beautiful. And then you have to clean up that mess. And it was just, we got it done. And to this day, it's been 2 years, and I'm still really proud of how we were able to do that. And the late nights and that too, again, the delirium will get to you. And there's this funny video that I took on my phone where we're throwing some of the dummies out of the maze and into the dumpster, and we did like a big Lebowski callback, like, where's the money? And
He's so sad.
And we were, like I said, we were so tired and everything, but you find time to have fun with it and realize what you're doing is part of something much bigger than you. And I think that's what gets you through when you're hungry and you're covered in paint and maybe it's like 90 degrees out or, whatever.
After working at Scarowinds and still working at Scarowinds for so long, how has Scarowinds impacted your life?
I can honestly say that I would not be the person that I am without. I think there's a reason that I did decide to audition and join, because you are my people. These are my people. And it's proof, honestly, of what it's like when you do find your people, because then you get to develop a lot, and you're in a place where it's safe to do so. We're odd and dark, and that works for us. And when you meet that many people, it's bound to change you. It makes you more confident in yourself. I've always struggled with my confidence, but I know that it would have been so much worse if I had never found you and all these other people. I mean, it's a community. There are so many things that in the moment over the course of 13 years, you're going to run into like challenge. You just tell yourself, and I told myself, if I can do this, then I can do this next thing, or I can do anything. So it really was like building blocks. It's like, I got through that, I can get through this. This is a challenge, but I know that because I did this, I was able to rise above it, whether that was doing something on decor or building, learning how to drive a forklift. Like, I never thought, if you had told 17-year-old me that eventually I would be driving a forklift through the park with a Snoopy doghouse on it, I would have laughed in your face. There's so many experiences that I never would have had, and so much growth that I wouldn't have been able to do. And I really love myself and trust myself a lot more now because I've been able to get through those things. And not only that, but I have found that is where I belong, is in the arts and doing entertainment. I mean, I do stand-up comedy. I don't think I ever would have even had the nerve to get up and try if I hadn't acted for so long. So it has influenced me everywhere that I go. There are skills that I am using now, like talent managing, acting. I've helped with auditions and casting in a small capacity there, but now I'm getting opportunities to take that further and develop that more. Again, I never would have had those opportunities were it not for that place. So it has really shaped who I am, and I'm incredibly proud of myself for that, but I'm also just proud of all the people that I've chosen to surround myself, because when I think about who we were then and what we're doing now, it's incredible. And I'm proud of you too.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I honestly don't know where or who I would be if I hadn't been working at Scarowinds. It's done so much for me, and it's given me so many incredible people in my life, like you and many other fabulous monsters. Working there for 13 years, you've seen a lot and dealt with a lot of guests. So why don't you share with us a time or two where you had a challenging guest and how you overcame that?
I think sometimes in this world, hot guests they're uniquely, they can be combative sometimes. Sometimes people, I think, will come and they buy a ticket so that they can take out whatever is bothering them on us. Because in that moment, we are not real people. I don't know what that is. Maybe we just do such a good job of convincing them that we actually are monsters. Even in spite of that, I try to approach every night of Haunt with an open mind. And over the years, you learn to read different reactions from guests. And sometimes even a guest who might be like mean or like even reach out and try and like hit you, you can gauge whether or not that was just a reaction based on fear, and they're probably not even aware that they're doing it, and they don't mean to hurt you. That is a really good way to look at things. It's like, I don't know, maybe this person isn't really trying to hurt me. That said, there are so many different kinds of guests, and I really do, I appreciate everybody that comes through. I will give you the benefit of the doubt. When you come in and buy that ticket, I assume that you are here to be entertained and scared, and that you are, you have good intentions. I've seen the other side of that. I've seen the people that they will, and we talk about this a lot in training, and as a talent manager and a supervisor, we have to protect our people. I mean, safety is so important. So when we tell you, if you see a guest in your area and they're walking through like this, or they're saying things like, I'm gonna hit you, they're not lying. Like, don't challenge them on that. They for whatever reason, they have chosen to be aggressive towards you. I said all that to say, yes, I have had some experiences when I was a new actor and I didn't know better like I do now. I might get too close. I might get too close and not realize that I'm doing it. And then there were times I may have gotten punched in the face a few times. And, that's when you literally step back and say, like, did I invade their space a little bit? And sometimes it's you, sometimes it's them. I think when you have an interaction with a guest that is negative, you have to look at yourself too and say, did I do something? Did I go a little too far? Or is this really them? And that will also help you figure out how to, like, do I need to get my supervisor? Do we need to call security? Was this just like a one-off and they're not going to do it again? That kind of thing. Oh, in 2013, when I was the madam, I had my prop. My prop was so fun. It was this big fan. I got my fan tattooed on me.
Oh,
I loved it so much. These are all my like Scarowinds tattoos. But I had my fan, and it was big, and it made this like sound, and it was so dramatic. But I was walking through my scare zone, obviously in character one night, and there was this little girl with her mom, and she was looking at me, and all I did was, and I don't actively try to seek out scaring little kids. I don't think that's right. You can scare around them because they're there, but like you don't try to target them. They're tiny. So in that instance, I looked at the girl and I smiled to kind of be sweet and like, you know, as sweet as you can be as a monster. And I just flicked my fan, and it was loud. And the little girl shuddered, and her mom. I mean, I don't know if her mom had been waiting for an opportunity to do this or what. But she had a cup of water in her hand and just right in my face. All because I just went with my little fan. And I got really angry in that moment. And I don't know, I was angry, I think, obviously because I was covered in water. But I think I got angry at the mom for not understanding that I wasn't trying to scare her kid. And I tried to even explain that to her, and then she started yelling at me and swearing, and then things had to escalate. And for my safety and the safety of everybody in my area, security, like what's called, it's kind of funny when you think, like, I was trying to reason with her. I didn't want to scare your kid. I was just being an actor. And guests don't always understand that. Sometimes they do. And like you said, there are those guests who are fans. They want to take your picture. They want to know your story. And those are the experiences that I actually focus on more and remember more, and are the positive ones.
If you ever get into haunt acting, just be ready.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. But the important part is just to...
More often than not, it's a positive experience.
Exactly.
And more often than not, the guests are great.
Yeah. And it was just like you were saying too. Any guest that hits you, 90% of the time it's a reflex. They didn't mean to do it. Continuing with tips, what are some tips you'd give to new haunt actors?
That finding the balance between where your character begins and where your character ends, it's really easy to get super into that, and then it becomes like part of your identity. But I will say this, after playing several different characters, variety is going to be your friend, especially if you want to do this more. You don't want to limit yourself by saying, this is the only character that I play, this is the only character that I know how to play. And it's great if you can do that well. Like we were talking about the Vampire King earlier. He did that for a long time, and he was great, and he became his own entity. But that doesn't happen all the time. And
Right.
for you to become so entrenched in a character that isn't really getting you anywhere, if you're trying to develop as an actor, it actually isn't serving you at all. So I would say variety is your friend, open-mindedness is your friend. And, perfect example, in 2016, I was originally cast, because that year I ended up being a vampire, I was originally cast in another Skeleton Key, and I would have been playing a character that was kind of like silly and goofy, and I was really intimidated by that because I was like, I don't know how to act that way, which is really funny because now I do stand-up comedy, and I'm sitting here like, I don't really know how to be funny or goofy, and now it's like what I do. But in the moment, I was not up for that challenge, and I have wished that I was. Because like I said before, by the time I got done that season playing the character that I was playing, I was burned out on being a vampire. It was like, I kind of wish I would have tried something else. And I eventually did go on to try other things, but it took me having that experience of, I can say goodbye to this character. So I think that is my biggest piece of advice, is obviously safety is important, listen to your supervisors, but if you're just for actors, like, have a repertoire, because you never know where that's going to take you. And you know this very well. You are a jack of all trades.
Yeah, I've played a lot of different characters, and there were some that were definitely a challenge, but I'll never forget, there was a character, I just got handed Schoolboy, and there wasn't really much description to it. I had to wear a purple sweater vest. I'm like, I don't know about this, and then ended up being my most iconic character, Jack Barlow from the Playground.
That's how that started?
That's how it started, yeah.
Now I'm a bad friend. I didn't know that.
So, if Scarowinds built a maze based off one of your characters, what would that look like?
I want to start by saying that
Disclaimer?
they wouldn't.
Aw.
But if they did, and I only say that because it would be hard for them. It would be probably be a PR nightmare, honestly. But it would be based on an abandoned church.
Oh.
And I think and I say that with respect because we are smart enough there to know that like we can't really make it too religious. The funny thing is when we did the Four Horsemen, I was honestly surprised. I was like, look at us, like we are towing that line.
That's
right
the
there.
boldest they've ever been.
Yeah, and
sure.
I appreciated that a lot. I had a lot of respect for that. If I were to envision a maze, it would have some kind of religious affiliation, particularly with the Catholic Church. And I say that because one of my rules in scaring is if you don't know what to do, use what scares you. So for me, when I'm thinking about my movements or how I'm going to talk as this character, I'm thinking about the things that scare me. And like demonic movies, obviously The Nun, those kinds of things are what really get to me. So if I can be that, if I can embody that, then I feel like I'm doing a good job scaring. So I think that in a perfect world, in a perfect scenario, we would be able to have a maze that is loosely based on the Catholic Church or some kind of even abandoned like religious seminary, nunnery, that kind of thing. It would take two characters. So my character in 2017, Madame Zora, she was the one that did the seances. She was loosely linked to the character the next year. And I just did that for me. That was mostly like a way to help me get into this character was how can I connect the two because they were really pivotal for me. So it would find a way to tie in like this whole like necromancy, talking to the dead thing with an element of like the Four Horsemen. So like with famine. And I think that there would be a way to do that. I think it would be very unsettling for people. And I would understand like the religious line there. But I think that it would involve, I'm thinking about the decor. It would be very dark, traditional, like abandoned Catholic school or something like that, and the characters would all be like maybe learning how to do necromancy in this space. They're learning how to like talk to the dead, and then with the Four Horsemen you kind of flip that around to like maybe somebody survived a famine and maybe their family members didn't, and that's why they want to talk to the dead. Those kinds of things. So it would be very niche for sure, but those are the things that freak me out. So if I'm planning a whole maze around that, I'm using what's going to scare me, and necromancy scares me. Demonic possession scares me. So.
Religion, scary.
You're not wrong.
That sounds like a really unique, interesting idea. I would love if it ever did. I would definitely want to come see it if it ever did come true. Just to put it in perspective with Scarowinds, I mean, we live here in the Bible Belt. So Overlord didn't get horns until the last couple years he was around, which that was really cool. And he looked so cool in his final form.
He did, and it's interesting that you say that because I experienced a lot of that. I mean, we all did because there was that concert that was held every year.
The Christian Music Festival.
Yes, people would go to that and then they'd buy tickets to Scarowinds and then they just like pray for us all night, walk around. In the Skeleton Key where I was doing seances, I would have people so when you buy the Skeleton Key, you're basically buying all of them. And it's like a collective mall experience type thing. So they would be in line for mine, not really knowing exactly what it was. And there were several people who would be in line and then they'd figure out what it was or hear what it was. And they would not only get upset, but get out of line. Because they're like, I'm not doing that. She's talking, like, what if this is real? Like they're basically like thought that I was actually having seances and maybe involving some kind of real demonic entity, which I did my best not to do. So they would take it that seriously and just get out of line, didn't even want to try and experience it. So it really does matter to them, which is why I'm saying they wouldn't have a Catholic church maze, but it'd be pretty cool if they did.
It would be.
Yeah.
You never know. Because you've been around Scarowinds so much, there's always been these stories and rumors that it's very much haunted. Have you had any ghostly experiences at Carowinds?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy.
I've been just waiting for somebody to ask me about this on camera. And the funny thing is, none of it was ever in like Scarowinds mazes or really had to do with Scarowinds. It was like our other areas of the park. The warehouse, the big events warehouse where like we keep Winterfest decor and everything. It's like all the holidays threw up on each other. It's a huge warehouse. It's our storage area. There was one night during an event we did during 2020 called Taste of the Season, and I had been in there cleaning all day, and I was alone at the time. And I'm at the desk, I think I'm making a list or something, and I just hear these very specific Christmas bells that were only used on a few things, and I know where they're stored in the warehouse. And I just hear like a gradual like da-da, da-da, and it just becomes more to the point where, I mean, the building kind of adjusts in a way. It's like that warehouse. You can hear the walls. You know, you can hear the walls. You can hear things moving. And I was just like, that must be what that is. And then I thought, why would the bells that are in a box on the floor have anything to do with it? So the more it's ringing, I call my coworker, Elise, and I'm like, where are you? She was at Harmony Hall. I was there in maybe 5 seconds. I don't know if my feet touched the ground. I was like, bing! I did not want to be alone in there anymore. And it was dark out, too. So, no, that definitely happened. And then another thing that happened in there was the lights. They're motion sensor now, but they used to be these big traditional warehouse lights where you flick the switch and it takes a minute or two for every row of lights to come on. And they come on one by one, which couldn't be any creepier if they tried. So I flick the switch on. I'm opening in the morning, and I flick the switch on. My team's not there yet, and the lights are coming on. I'm used to all of that. And then I just see something coming towards me from the other side of the warehouse. And I thought, because Elise messes with me all the time, I thought, okay, she must have gotten in here before I did, and now she's like running up to me and whatever. And it wasn't like I heard footsteps or this was like a definite thing. It was just like I kind of see, because it was dark, like I could just see something coming towards me, and it looked like there was hair moving. So I thought it was her. I didn't really think anything of it, but the door to the warehouse is still open, and then I hear her come up from outside behind me. So obviously this is not her. And then the lights come on and I don't see anything anymore. But that really freaked me out. And the last one I will say is Carowinds Theater. A lot of people have experiences with this. It took me many years to have experiences in the theater. But we were setting up for Winterfest. We're on the stage putting these enormous trees together. And we have help from other departments. And then at this point, Rides is coming to help us. So I know they're on their way, and I'm kind of expecting to see people that maybe I'm not super familiar with filing into the theater looking for something to do. So I'm on stage with this kid, Brandon, who used to work with me, and I look in the back of the very back wall of the theater, and there's a guy who was one of our techs, and he's on a ladder kind of like halfway into the ceiling doing something. I'm not sure what. But then I see somebody beside him in jeans and a gray hoodie, and I'm like, even right now. He's in jeans and a gray hoodie, and he's kind of like, I can't see his face, but he's almost turned towards Mike on the ladder. And then I look at and because I didn't recognize him, I assumed he was one of our rides hands who was just coming to help. Maybe I didn't know him yet. And I look at Brandon, and I say, will you tell that kid beside Mike that he's working with us? He's not working with Mike. He's not working with electrics. And then Brandon looks at me and is like, there isn't anybody beside Mike. I know. Even right now, I'm like, and like, he sees all the color drain from my face, and then I see it drain from his, and he was like, did you see somebody beside Mike? And this, where they were, if there was somebody there and they ran out, they wouldn't have been able to run out without us seeing them, because it's a huge theater, and the doors are, it just wouldn't have been able to be possible.
No.
I thought I was losing my mind. And the best part of this was, I'm this kid's supervisor, so he probably thinks his boss is losing her mind. Like, how am I supposed to trust you when you're hallucinating? But we didn't even really talk about it for like a couple months after that. And then finally he was like, did you really see? And I was like, I swear on Christmas, I saw somebody standing beside Mike.
Those are some great ghost stories, and just incredible stories overall. You've shared so much. I've learned so much.
I've learned a lot about you too.
And especially just going down memory lane, hearing you talk about your characters and the Four Horsemen, all that stuff. It's been great. I'm going to link her Instagram if you'd like to follow Cutti. It'll be down in the description below. Anything else you'd like to shout out right now? Or
Yeah, follow me on Instagram. I do stand-up comedy, and I post all my shows there. I appreciate you having me and all the support you've given me over the years. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to me ramble about the good old days.
Alright, well, if you like this video, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and all those other lovely things we have down in the description below. And be sure to follow Cutti. She's hilarious.
Thank you, yes. I'm Hot Grandma on Instagram, and there are a few of us, but I am... You'll know it's me. I had to fight for that username, but I got it. Other hot grandmas exist.
Until next time.
Keep it spooky. Subscribe and hit